Hi, this is Melindy from Paris Living. I hope everyone is okay and handling the heat wherever they are in Paris right now. It's pretty hot and humid and there's no wind and it seems oppressive, but then again it's Paris, so it's okay. So this time I'm going to talk about the worst neighborhoods in Paris. And that's very easy because there aren't any. I mean, I'll talk about two specific neighborhoods where I personally wouldn't buy an apartment for reasons that I'll go into. But considering that Paris is small and gentrification is happening pretty much everywhere, it's there are not a lot of places that used to be scary to walk around at night or undesirable. Most of it is becoming more and more expensive. And I've talked previously about the fact that there are a very limited number of residential square meters in Paris, and eventually they will all be appreciated, so to speak. I come from New York, and Manhattan has, completely changed since I grew up. So it's the same kind of phenomenon. And it's no stranger to a lot of cities. I mean, this is something that happens. So the two worst neighborhoods. First one that comes very quickly to mind is part of the 19th. Part of the 19th is on one side of the canal and part of it is on the other. The part of the 19th that is on the west side of the canal, so that's the line 7, it's Metro Crimée, Riquet, and then it goes up into Parc de la Villette. That area next to the canal, and then Avenue de Flandre, there are a lot of buildings. I don't know if they actually classify as brutalist. They might, as far as architectural style. But in any case, there are, they have not aged very well, is all I can say. And from Avenue de Flandre, or even the canal, close to the canal gives value to property because there's cafes and things, and it's a body of water, so that's automatically a plus. But from Avenue de Flandre and then moving west, you're gonna hit all of the train tracks coming out of Gare de l'Est and Gare du Nord. So those are things that, for many buildings, if you look out your window, that's a terrible view, and it's also noise, and those are two things that are never gonna go away, and they're always going to have a negative impact on property value. So there's those two big train stations, Gare de l'Est are the trains going into Germany, and then Gare du Nord has the trains going north, the Eurostar going up to Amsterdam. So there are a lot of trains, and then when you get past the two train stations and all of the railways going out of Paris, you get into the 18th, and that part of the 18th where there's Metro, Max Dormois, or Château Rouge, those are still areas where the architecture is not great. It's, it takes a lot of maintenance and care. And if a building, and a lot of them are mostly tenants, the landlords don't tend to put a lot of money into maintaining the common areas. So a lot of the real estate there is not great, and it's probably one of the areas, I'm saying as a woman, I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable walking around at night. However, Boulevard Barbès, which goes straight up to Château Rouge, the line 4 continues from Barbès up to Château Rouge. If you cross the street, literally one more block and you're going up the hill into Montmartre, which is a very sought after area. and has very expensive real estate. So it's a matter of, maybe 500 meters less between an area where I don't think that gentrification will happen for a long time, be that a good thing or not. And then, then right next door is Montmartre and some very expensive properties, and obviously a very big destination for tourists. So those are so it's a very close but real distinction. So I say between the 19th from Avenue de Flandre over to Boulevard Barbès, I wouldn't invest, not even now with the Olympics coming and everything, because there's too many structural things in place, like the 2 train stations. There's no real way to get over the impact on the negative impact on property values there. The other neighborhood, so that's one. The other neighborhood is that no one ever asks me to look in. Like, no one has ever asked me, I really want an apartment in the 13th. So yeah, the 13th. And I have friends who live there and like it, but there are a lot of areas where there are these very tall, what we would call towers. They're just high rises, and they're not pretty. And strangely, they might not be expensive per square meter, but the maintenance is very high because the elevators, several elevators, and the maintenance is expensive. So compared to another normal Parisian building of seven floors and an elevator, it's multiples of that. So the 13th is also, I suppose most people think it's kind of just boring. So I've never had any demand there. And to be honest, and it's totally subjective, I have no interest really in like hanging out there. I've never gone there. There's only one area there called Boutocaille. And we'll do a little segment on that on social media. Which is very cool. But besides that, there's one other area that's just starting to get quote unquote cool. It's the north of the 13th, and there's a lot of startups there. There are a lot of new builds. Some of them have some like vegetative walls, like not vegetative is not the right word, but like the walls of the external facade of the building have like plants on them, and so there's sort of like this éco-durable type of construction. And so there are a lot of startups, a lot of like tech types are over there. So who knows? I mean, that neighborhood might have a lot of potential, but it doesn't have as far as the architecture, it doesn't have any of the things that most of my clients are looking for, as in, a Parisian apartment. These are new builds, and they're very cookie cutter, and they are very energy efficient, and for people who are very, very concerned with that, those are great units. But that neighborhood is up and coming in the tech world, in the startup world, but it does lack in architectural charm. So that's it. I can't think of any other place, except for one, part of the 15th, that is close to the railway tracks coming down out of Gare Montparnasse. And all of those trains go to like Brittany and further. So those, there's an area where there's no metro. You'd have to walk maybe 20 minutes to get to Convention, get to the line 12 or to the line 8. And that is also something in Paris that would impact property value, because the metro network is so extensive. You can sometimes on the street see the sign for the next metro station down the road. So there's, it's a great system. And so if there's no metro near you, that will definitely decrease the value of the property. If you're not bothered with walking, that's great. It's just something to be aware of for resale. So it's not a bad neighborhood at all in the 15th. In fact, it's quite nice, but it's just very inconvenient. That's the major thing. And then the streets that are close to the railway lines, that is also just the constant like noise and rumbling. That is something that is sort of like a permanent, let's call it a defect, that you cannot change. You can change a lot of things on the inside of an apartment, but then there's the things that you can't. So if you just, want something that is, you have a price point in mind and you don't care about those things, that's fine. You buy at a discount, but then you're going to sell at a discount. So those are my bad neighborhoods in Paris, which are not that bad. And just a quick note about inflation and corresponding interest rates. So the European Central Bank has finally decided to increase interest rates on July 21st. It'll increase by 0.25%. And they're announcing a second increase in September that they say will be a bigger increase. So it could be 0.5. This is to be able to tamper inflation in France, which has gone up to upwards of 10%, which is unheard of. I mean, we've been trying to deal with deflation for years. This is all linked to the conflict, very unfortunate conflict in Ukraine, and the EU has to use monetary policy for the entire Eurozone. So, there are countries in Eastern Europe who have inflation rates, 17, 18, 19%. So this was inevitable. It's still, interest rates for home loans, since they're fixed rate, are still historically low. I mean, we're still talking under 2%. So I don't think that it is a factor if you're planning on getting a French loan, which you should contact me about, and I can put you in touch with the right people. But yeah, the interest rates will go up, which means that demand will slow a little bit, which is good for buyers because there's not as much competition, because there has been so much competition over the past few years. Okay, I'm gonna end it there. DM me, comment, contact me. I'm always here and happy to chat. Have a free consultation if you are planning on buying an apartment in Paris. Okay, take care. Bye.